For a national outlook on the spring weather, Joe caught up with one of the nation's most respected weather forecasters at the Cattle Industry Annual Convention in Reno.
I'm joined by Dr. Art Douglas of Creighton University and the long-range weather forecaster for CattleFax. Dr. Douglas, farmers and ranchers seeing a lot of headlines these days about La Nina. Would you explain what that weather pattern is and what its implications are for the country and for the world's weather?
La Nina refers to very cold water along the equator. It's kind of the antithesis of El Nino. El Nino is when it warms up. When we have an El Nino situation with a lot of energy on the equator, a lot of strong jet stream activity, the southeastern United States tends to be quite wet. La Nina, on the other hand, is really cold water on the equator, very little energy. The jet then pulls way far north. It weakens, and the United States really doesn't have a lot of weather with La Nina. In fact, drought is more common.
Okay, and we have a couple areas of the country that have experienced pretty severe drought over the last year or two, that being the southeast and the far west. Do you see that continuing, or do you see some relief for those two areas of the country?
The southeast, we would expect to continue to be dry through the spring with La Nina conditions. In the western United States, actually, there's been some moisture in California, Arizona that's got into New Mexico, the Central Rockies. That's really not what we would expect with La Nina. And the forecast now is for that area, especially Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, to really start drying out again.
Of course, those are areas that are really critical to grazing conditions in the cattle industry, but also cattlemen are always concerned about how the weather is going to be in the grain belt. And with grain prices being exceptionally high, we need good growing conditions. What do you see happening in the grain belt as far as growing conditions this spring and on into the summer?
Well, one thing we got to kind of look at the southern hemisphere right now. It's their summer. And Brazil, and especially southern Brazil, Argentina has had a very bad drought. That's going to impact corn, especially in Argentina. We've also seen a problem in Australia. A year ago was El Nino. They had drought. They'll probably get wetter this next summer, June, July, and August. Maybe have a better wheat situation there. As we turn towards the United States, then, we're going to see lower supplies coming out of South America, as well as those problems we had in Australia. I expect the southeastern United States to actually start improving. And I also think, though, in the Midwest, it looks like the main drought high is going to be more towards the northern Rockies. The Midwest, on the other hand, maybe a near normal summer, normal precipitation, normal temperatures, and given all the subsoil moisture they have now from a wet fall and winter, I think they could be in really good shape.
And as far as early spring planting conditions, that can be critical for, especially for corn, how much of those acres projected for corn actually get planted. Do you see in the early spring favorable planting conditions?
I think the major concern we have might be with the amount of moisture that we've had. We had a very wet October, which really bumped up the subsoil moisture conditions. We've had a lot of snow in the northern plains. We're probably going to have some flooding problems up in the Dakotas, northern Minnesota. Further south, I expect a relatively mild spring, but the precipit's probably going to stay normal to above normal, so there could be some planting delays associated then with those wet soils, not so much because of the temperature being cold.
All right, Dr. Douglas, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Joe.
This is Joe Sheely with Dr. Art Douglas for Cattleman to Cattleman.